Hey, all, welcome back to Right at the Wire. Well, I just concluded a really fun night at Turfway Park last night over at Trust the Profits, the cocktail lounge. I want to give them a shout out. If you haven't experienced it yet, go on over there on Thursday nights. We handicap Turfway Park. And then later in the summer, we'll be doing it Cinnaboya Downs. Lots of fun and profitable, too. Last night, I had a huge night. I think we cleared 1,600 from the original $100 bankroll. But what I wanted to talk to you about today was the first race offered, for me anyway, a long shot. And I know a lot of times people say, after you hit a big price on a horse, how did you hit that? What was your thinking? How did you come up? I never would have came up with it. So I thought we'd analyze how I came up with a long shot and maybe give you a little bit of insight on how you can find some great value in horse racing. It doesn't necessarily have to be in a stakes race. More often than not, the great long shots come from those everyday claiming races, maidens, allowances. So there are some things to look for. And what we're going to do is we're going to, as long shots, hopefully there'll be more of them come up, the different ways you can find them. We'll do another posting for each. But this one offers a very unique way to find a long shot that may not be readily apparent in a horse race. So let's take a look at it. So this is handicapping a long shot, tolerating ambiguity. Very important concept. You have to, when you take a risk or when you gamble, you have to tolerate ambiguity, some uncertainty. There always is in horse racing. No two are alike. A lot of things can happen, but you have to, in order to find a long shot, you've got to tolerate a little more ambiguity than perhaps you do with the chalk. So you have to have that mindset going in that you trust your instincts, you trust what you know, and then if you see a long shot that looks evident, you got to go for it. And you just have to throw caution to the wind. There'll always be another horse race. There's always other opportunities to make money. You have to think of it in those terms. So that's the first thing to understand about long shots, is if you can get yourself to the place where you can discount or discard what the betting public likes in terms of the favorite horses, then you're going to find value more readily. So I just throw that in there right off the top. Now, I've got Rich Strike here, one of the more famous long shots from a couple years ago, won the Derby at 81-1, and I had him. And these become apparent. The reason Rich Strike paid so well and the reason that I was able to find him was the betting public hadn't made up their mind. Very important concept. When you look at the tote board prior to a race, if you see two or more horses at roughly the same odds on top as favorites, what does that mean? It means the betting public hasn't made up their mind. The reason being, they've all got some vulnerability to them. That's when long shots appear, because it's an old maxim: when you have two identical favorites, take the long shot. And so that's became apparent on Derby Day. I was fully prepared to bet Epicenter. I thought he was the best horse going into the race, but the betting public and showed there were Epicenter, I think Zandon, and one other were all at roughly the same price, like 3 or 4 to 1, maybe 5 to 1. Couldn't remember. But the point is that there was enough vulnerability in each of them that the betting public couldn't just stamp Epicenter as the solid favorite. When that happens, plus the fact that we knew the pace scenario with Summer Is Tomorrow was going to be pretty darn hot, and the other Japanese horse, Crown something or other, I can't remember. We knew there was going to be some pretty quick pace, and that always opens things up in a big race in particular for a long shot. So those two factors, vulnerability, indecision of the betting public, and then a favorable pace scenario for a crazy late runner, sets you up for looking for a long shot. So I started looking through all big odds horses. I didn't look for anything else, and I landed on Rich Strike for a couple of reasons. Number one, he was moving from synthetic surface to dirt. And those of you who have seen my postings before know that is one of my all-time favorite angles. Why? Synthetic is a lot harder to run on. So a lot of times trainers use it as a tightener, and if that's not their intent, the point is horses are very fit coming off synthetic, and when they get back on dirt, it's like taking the handcuffs off. It's much easier to run on for them, and so they tend to run better. In particular, Norman McKnight at Oaklawn Park for years has been bringing his horses down from Canada, and I love betting them because they get off that synthetic and they run like hell at Oaklawn. So that was the part of it. The second thing was this horse was coming off a career high speed figure while not being commensurate with the better horses in the race. Wasn't that far off, and with another move forward, this horse could factor. The work tab looked solid. The word was he was training well. So you had all those variables that told you this horse was going to run a big race. Was it a lock cinch? No. But the scenario was ripe for it, so why not take a chance? At 81 to 1, what's it going to hurt? Sure, it's the Kentucky Derby, but it's a betting opportunity. And this is what I mean about tolerating ambiguity and eschewing your reservations and your fears. You know, it's the Kentucky Derby. I don't want to take a chance. I mean, it's the biggest race of the year. Sure it is. But doesn't mean you can't bet other horses as savers, but this was worth a shot, and I took it. And it turned out to be the right play, and I was well compensated for it at 81 to 1. So that's the type of scenario you're looking for. You're looking for vulnerable favorites, as always, but also in instances where the betting public can't quite make up their mind. And that, when you see that, you automatically have to start looking for a long shot. So let's take a look at the race in question that happened last night, and we'll see how we came up with our long shot play. So obviously the first thing we have to do is handicap the race. And the first race at Turfway Park, which incidentally is a track that long shots appear all the time. It's just the nature of the beast, the big fields, the synthetic surface. There always seems to be value, and you almost have to look for that before you look for the better favorites to win, because there always seems to be a lot of vulnerable favorites. So this is a great track to find long shots. So we see the first race here is a maiden claimer for 7,500 for fillies and mares, 3-year-old and up, run at 6 furlongs on the all-weather. And maidens are a great place to find long shots. They're a little harder sometimes because they take the form of a first-time starter who a trainer has been hiding in the weeds that we don't know a whole lot about. But when you get these maiden claimers, particularly when you don't really have first-time starters, you've got horses that have run a while. This is a lot of times where you can find some really good value. So we're just going to take a look pretty quickly, one at a time, at the horses, and then we'll see how we maybe arrived at the conclusion we've got to find some value. You see Gamby, number 1, immediately 15 to 1, so we're thinking possible. You see he hadn't been run since July, and he's 0 for 12, and so immediately that tells me pass, because this horse does not know how to win. Coming off a layoff, could he in fact demonstrate some growth or whatnot that would put him in the mix here? Sure, but I don't see anything on the work tab, and it'd be too much of a leap of faith for a horse who just really doesn't factor terribly much, so he would be a toss. So then we have 1776 at 30 to 1. Again, another one we want to look at, pay attention to. We do see the weight allowance at 118, so you're getting a 6+ pound weight differential, and that's always a good thing. So that's something I'm going to look at and get kind of excited. This horse hasn't had a workout since December, so has been running. And we look at the track record here, and this is, again, another horse who really doesn't understand how to win. And the last couple of races were pretty mediocre efforts, albeit at a higher class level. The main issue is this horse really doesn't know why she's running. So this one would be a pass, even with blinkers off. So now we come to Lily's Home, 3 to 1. So now we know there's a horse here who the public is probably going to gravitate to. But Am I? No. Why? This horse is 0 for 19. I make it a rule. You don't have to follow it. It's just my own personal rule. When you get over 10 starts without a win in the maidens, I won't consider them just because there's just no point to it and they're too unreliable. You see 6 seconds and a third. That makes really a horse you want to avoid because this horse may have seconitis and is an underlay. At 3-1, I don't want any part of this horse, so I'm going to pass. But I like the fact that a lot of the betting public will look at this horse as a plausible win candidate at 3-1. So that pricks my ears up, if you will. So now we come to pledulations, and at 15-1. So my interest is piqued once again. Now I see David Ryder is 0 for 12. And so the barn is a little cold, and I see Rafael Majik is 1 for 19. So automatically there's a little bit of reservation when it comes to this horse. But let's take a look. 0 for 5. Not enough that I'm ready to throw this horse out. I look at the work tab, and I do see that a couple of works, which for maiden claimers following a race is always a pretty good thing because they're keeping this one busy. So for a reason, so that's something I kind of like. Now I look at the races and I see at the maiden special weight level at Belterra, this one ran a class level 108 higher than the 106 race level. You see that RR on the left there and the CR on the right, that bookend race type. That's what that means. So that means this horse ran better than the race level. So that's a positive. It got an okay third. Moved to turf. It didn't run quite as well, but, new surface and stretching out for the first time. Saved ground, but to no avail. So not much happened there. So they moved back to the dirt to a mile. And you see ran an even race, another okay third, and was widest run for third. So this horse lost a lot of ground and still was able to get third. So that's a positive. So then they cut this one back to a sprint. Again, at the maiden level, they haven't pushed the panic button yet. And you see, kind of ran a little disappointing race, kind of ran to the race level or the class that she was running against. So that's a little bit of a turnoff, but you do note it was also a key race because the winner of the maiden in that race came out and won her next start. And it says that she, pledulations, was a long, evenly, no kick. So this horse maybe just hasn't quite figured it out yet. But I'm not ready to throw away completely because this horse has shown enough promise that a win looks like might happen fairly soon. But that's not why I necessarily picked this horse at 15-1 or better. Here's why. Debuted after a layoff. So immediately, from September to January, there's a lot of things that can happen. A lot of growth, a lot of improvement. And while it didn't necessarily, you see a fair amount of works, 3 works prior to coming off the bench consistently. That's not enough to really get me excited. But here's what is. Running at a route, a mile and a 16th, now cutting back to a sprint. Love the route to sprint angle. I also note that while it's a small sample size, you see David Ryder is 33%, or 1 for 3 when he drops a horse 2 classes. Okay? So there's a couple of things that, not real solid, but a little something. But here's where it became apparent this was the horse I wanted. At a mile and a 16th, look at that running line. You see the start. 2, started second, a length and a half behind. First call, third, a length and a half behind. Then fell off the cliff. And there's drop back, finished 33 lengths behind. Well, what does that say? If you read Andy Byer's book, Picking Winners, this is the first handicapping book I ever read. He had a little nugget that I have used more times than I can count. When you see a running line like this, particularly when the horse really bolts out of the gate, gets right up to the lead, and you see a 1 at the start and then a 1 at the first call, and then they fall off the cliff, it means only one thing. That horse is very keyed up to run and is rock fit. And they're a little edgy because they're so sharp and so keen to go. So usually what happens is in the next start, second off the layoff, that's when you want to bet them. And here I had a horse who was dropped 50% in class, who had run okay as a maiden, so had some decent back form, was going route to sprint, and had this golden scenario. So this is a horse I'm really liking for that reason. Moreover, if we keep looking at the rest of the field, we're going to see horses that have a lot of hair on them. Clovertown, 0 for 11, last race, inside run, lost ground, in class, is not dropping in class, nothing new, and you see the drop from maiden and maiden 12-5 hasn't helped. This horse still just doesn't know how to win. Even hit with Luan Machado, who is the jockey at Turfway, had trouble. Is coming in third off the layoff. I like that, and I do see the speed figures improving a little bit. But it's a horse that I would consider, but it's not enough to say yes, this is the one I want. Particularly since the last two in class have been okay, nothing spectacular, and really no excuses. But that's a short price horse, which again makes my long shot look even better. So now we look at Gotham Gray. And this is one that is 0 for 7, so still within the realm of consideration. And I look, this one's run at the maiden level, maiden 40, maiden 30 at up north at Aqueduct, at Belmont, Saratoga. So there's been some good back class, and this one's been, mixed results, but okay. But the last one in December at this exact same race, this one ran a 108. For a race, a 108 class rating. For a race, it's a 104. So ran a good race. So this one is one to be considered, definitely to use. But here's the thing I don't like. Look at the race level of that race with 104 compared to the 107, 108, 110 that this one had been running at. They had to drop this horse significantly in order to get a good effort out of her, and she still didn't win as the favorite. So right there, that tells me that this horse maybe isn't improving or doesn't have the potential to improve. It's a horse who's good enough, looks good enough to win, but it's not enough to get overly excited about. And certainly I'm not going to take a really short price when you have other horses with better back classes show more potential for improvement, like the 4. So we look at Soul Air. This is another one, 0 for 6, still within the realm of consideration. But see a trainer I don't know a whole lot about, and I see this one sold for $5,000 and now is running for $7,500. It's a bit of wishful thinking to me, and I haven't seen it work in a while. And I look, maiden 30 was the last one, so this is a significant class drop, and that's a pretty darn big one for a horse who finished an okay to disappointing 5th in their last race. That tells me that this is a fire sale. They just want to get rid of this horse. So even though the odds will be pretty good, there's not enough here for me to get excited. So then we look at All on the Call. This is another one that, is 0 for 5, worth considering. And you take a look, started at the maiden claiming level and got a good second first time. So now I know this horse maybe has some ability. But I look in following it up, at the maiden 50, you see after the maiden 30, they moved this horse up in class, and it really didn't pan out. So on dirt, then the Keeneland, and ran an okay race, ran a 109 class level with a 109 race level at Keeneland, so you get plus points for that. And it was a key race as the second place horse came back to win. So now I'm thinking, okay, this horse has maybe got something here. They stretch out to a mile at Turfway in December, and tried to wire the field, really didn't work out, even dropping in class. So that makes me a little nervous about this horse. So then they cut back to a sprint again. They drop in class 50% again. Runs a little bit better race. But again, this is like a horse who, while showed a little promise early, isn't showing the commensurate improvement. And I don't see signs other than coming off a layoff. and has a couple of works, but nothing eye-popping. So this is a horse who, at short odds, yeah, maybe I use, but I'm not thinking is real solid to win the race. So my 4 is looking even better. So now I look at Brisbane Road, and I see another trainer I'm not familiar with. Summer Paulie is 0 for 32, so you can't get excited about that. And you see a horse is 0 for 9 right on the border. So we look at the tab. We see a couple of works prior to coming off the bench, and the maiden 7,500 was a really weak race with a 103 race rating, and she ran a 101. Now, I can look at those running lines, and you kind of see the same thing I was talking about. This horse was very precocious early in the race, got a good start, jumped right to the lead, and then fell back. But didn't fall back in the same way that the 4 did at a route. And that was kind of the differentiating factor for me. Plus, this wasn't as good a race as the 4 ran in. And this horse hadn't really done much again in better classes of races. So immediately, to me, Brisbane Road becomes cheap speed and nothing more, and I'll pass. So then we look at Blossom Diva. Again, another trainer I'm not too familiar with. And 0 for 9 right on the border. And you see, it's been running on turf primarily over at Belterra, and not too much in the way of results. And you see, ran pretty well early on, trying to take them wire to wire in routes, but didn't build on anything that she had done early, and they kept dropping in class and really didn't help things very much. They moved to synthetic in December, and in a little better race than the 9 ran in, but didn't factor very much at all. Just not enough here to get excited about. Only 2 third-place finishes in 9 starts. And at 20 to 1, you do get good value, but I don't see signs that this horse is ready to make a big move forward. And moreover, that's a long, not very long of a layoff. So there can't be a lot of growth, in my opinion, or enough progress to tell me that this would be a horse I'd consider. So we get to 11, Lamani. Again, another trainer I don't know much about. Walter Rodriguez, pretty good jockey, and they are moving to him, so might be a little bit of an upgrade. You see this one is dropping in class from 15,000 to 7,500, and also ran in a route, coming off a fairly long layoff from November, where she had been running at FanDuel. FanDuel is a track that the form really doesn't transfer very well. I haven't seen it to Turfway. So I'm not really jazzed up that this horse was running in maidens and getting seconds there, especially since it's on the dirt. So comes off the layoff at a mile and a 16th, maiden 15, and you see a 106 race rating, so it wasn't bad, but ran a 102 class rating. And look, really didn't contend at all. The note is never contended. So that, to me, there's just not enough there. Could this horse improve second off the layoff, dropping in class? Sure. Yeah, it's possible, but I don't see enough signs there to get me excited about. And at 12 to 1, the odds aren't as good as they are with the 4. So Lamani, particularly parked on the outside with other speed to the inside, while route to sprint is a pretty good angle. I can't hang my hat on it. And you see this trainer drops 2 classes. He only gets 8% in small sample size. So there's just not enough there to get me excited about this horse. So now we look at the 12, Vivis in front, and we see Jack Hancock is 0 for the meet so far at a small sample size. And I look at this one, and I do see, I don't even know what WKY is. Maybe one of you can tell me. For as far as a training track, I've never heard of it. But you do see 3 works with some gaps in between. And so it looks to me like maybe they're going to run this horse into shape, or because it really hasn't had much of a layoff either. We look at the running lines and we see started in the maidens and it was a disaster. That's okay. Horses can get better with a second start. They gave this horse some time and dropped to a maiden 25. Nothing happened. So in Indiana Grand, which incidentally is another track that the form transfer to Turfway is a little mixed. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. So I don't get excited about horses that come from Indiana. Grant, they have to show me more than that. So we kept this one at the maiden 25 and ran a little better. Got a third. So that's encouraging. Now it moves to synthetic and crash. They dropped to a maiden 15, a little better race level at 105, but this one runs a 104 and doesn't really run a lick. This may be a horse who just doesn't like synthetic. And then in the next race was declared a non-starter, so don't know what to do with that, whatever. So bottom line is the speed figures are a little light, and while this horse is at 30 to 1, there's not enough here to tell me that this one is going to sprout wings all of a sudden and be a really competitive horse in this race. So that's the field. Now, we also had some eligibles. Casino Annie. Now, I'll say right off the bat, also eligibles are a great place to find long shots because it means the trainer is very eager to get a horse in the race. And while, yes, the post can sometimes be an issue, more often than not, they're very ready to run. And so it's a great place to find value, particularly if the body of the field is a little questionable. So we look at Casino Annie here, and we see Donald Parker is 0 for 3 at the meet, but he does have 2/3. And he's got Johnny McKee aboard. He's a pretty good rider. Okay, not great. But here's the problem. This horse sold at Keeneland for $22,000, and now he's running for $7,500. So that's a red flag to me right away, particularly when you consider he's by More Than Ready, whose stud fee is $50,000. So that's a major league red flag right off the bat when you see a horse, and I'll just highlight it here, who goes for well under the stud fee. So the farm has already lost money on this horse, and now the owner's going to lose money again, dropping this one for $7,500. If he wins the race, the winner's share plus $7,500, maybe that's enough to get back what he paid. But it is a red flag and something you always want to think about. So we see Casino Annie hasn't had a work since November 24th, so we're not going to worry about that. We look at the running lines and we see a horse who has been running at the maiden claiming level pretty much her entire career, and she's 0 for 9, right on that borderline where we want to just throw out completely. And we see in the last race at a mile, so we prick our ears up, route to sprint, at Turfway, at the same class level. You see it was a 104 race level, 105 class rating. So she ran a little better than the class of the race. So that's positive too. And we see awkward start, rank early, 3rd. So there's another excuse. This horse was a little rank. We look at the speed figures and, they're not improving. And that's really, when you consider this horse ran a 78 at a maiden 62.5 at Santa Anita last year, it's kind of troubling that after a fairly good layoff, this horse hasn't run anything close to that. So sometimes it takes a while for them to get back into form, but this is a little too long. So while I know to watch out for and also eligible, this one doesn't do enough for me. And again, 12 to 1, the price isn't good enough. And I think Casino Annie got bet down, if I recall what the tote board looked like. So Casino Annie, while I have some, I'm like thinking, this horse might beat me. I just don't see enough to get excited about, so I pass. So now I look at Redneck Agenda. The first thing I look at is only 2 starts. So this is a horse maybe to think about because there's upside. But here's the problem, 6 years old. This horse debuted at 5. And one thing I heard a trainer say once, Michael S.R. Wilson, is that horses who debut at 5 never really can get much better. And the main reason is they've grown. They're fully grown. There's no further growth that's going to happen. So immediately I see 6 years old, horse running in her 3rd start. I get a little, I have reservations immediately. And I see a nickel maiden claimer in November of last year. Race rating was 103, not so great. Ran a 102, up the track. Okay, first start. And you see that was a little keen early and then fell back. So that's something that you can build on, that, you think about, okay, well, the second start, maybe this horse will run better. But here's the thing. This horse was owned by Wesley Ward, or trained by Wesley Ward. When Wesley Ward puts a horse up for a nickel, they can't run. That's the bottom line. So that's a major league red flag, and I can't believe this horse was even claimed, to be quite honest. So the next start off the claim, you see this horse just didn't want to run, and they ran off and pulled up. So there's a lot of hair on this one, and I just can't get excited about a horse like Redneck Agenda. So I've looked at all the field, and I see that there's a lot of vulnerability in all the horses here. There's a couple that look okay, that you can use, like On the Call's one, maybe you want to think about being running fresh off the bench. Gotham Gray, definitely a horse that looks like might have some improvement coming off the bench, ran a decent second in class. So that's one to think about as well. And Clovertown, not quite as excited about it, 0 for 11, but this is one that maybe can stick around, but probably going to be an underlay. So we land on Pledulations. Why? 15 to 1 for the reason stated, upside. And it's hidden upside. This is the kind of upside the betting public doesn't see quite often. And this was a prime case of it. And so this is the horse we land on to win this race. And now we're going to take a look at it and see what happened. So here's the race in question. It happened last night, and you see them all lined up, and away we're about to go.
And there they go.
Now you see we had a look pretty keen. Once again, that 14 we thought might show a little bit of speed, as well as the 3. And you see Gotham Gray and Clovertown. They were very logical, we thought. Blossom Diva was a little unusual. But we look at our 4 horse and we see rating about mid-pack, a little towards the rear. And we know that a lot of these are notorious for folding. So we're not going to worry about early speed too much in this race. And I couldn't find one within the pack that I thought could wire this field. And that's another reason to take a look at a late runner.
There's Brisbane Road with a flash. She's 4 deep and she's closing in strong.
And as it is with Turfway, Brisbane Road ran a little better than we thought. But here's our 4, saving ground along the rail. Going to have to pick her way through, but looks like she's got some horse, and you can see getting it going. And these horses now, you got 3 across because none of them can figure out how to win. And here comes our 4, and look at that spurt. Look at that, right at the wire. And, it was close, but we got it. But the bottom line is we found some value in a race that had plenty of vulnerability, and it paid well. So we see the results of our labors, and we see the 4 Pledulation paid $38.16, $13.56 to place, and $9.10 to show. And when long shots in particular, I always love to bet across the board because even if they finish second, you still get paid. So this was quite a nice payday. And you see Gotham Gray and Lily's Home, a couple horses we also liked, came in as well. So we were able to get a really nice exacta, 165.94, and a 50-cent trifecta paid 186.37. So a really nice payday for doing the homework and finding some hidden value in a long shot. And as I mentioned, the book you want to take a look at that I learned about this was Picking Winners. It's a standard, it's a staple for handicappers. Every rookie handicapper should read this book by Andy Beyer, the dean of handicappers. And it's got a lot of great information about how to look at a race and how to find hidden value, and that's what it's all about. It's got a lot of different covers. It's been in reprint 2 or 3 times. But if you look on Amazon, just type in Picking Winners, or it should come up for you readily. But highly recommend it, as well as Betting Thoroughbreds by Stephen Davidowitz would be another one I'd mention. So take a look at it. So that's a pretty long chew, I know, but I think it was worth it. And, there's a lot of different ways to find long shots, and I've just given you one way that you can find value that the betting public won't see. and that will help to increase your ROI, and that's what it's all about. That's one of the reasons I started this channel. I did want to provide some educational material for some of you newer handicappers. I know most recently we've had a couple of you reaching out about getting started and how to do so. So if you got nothing else, Picking Winners is a book you ought to read. Absolutely a Bible when it comes to handicapping. But we're going to keep doing this. As other long shots appear, we'll have more postings and break down how to find one. But I hope you got something out of this, and I hope you use it to your advantage in the future. And of course, if you do like content like this, please like and subscribe. And thanks to all of you for coming on board. And we'll look forward to seeing you down the road. That's it from here. I'll talk to you soon. And until then, be well.